a seat so we can get started. Welcome to the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee. We have a quorum. I'm going to start with public speakers. If I call your name, please come up. There should be enough chairs there. Sergeants, is there at least 4 chairs? If I call your name, please come on up, and I will let you know what items you signed up to speak on. Kendrick Wested, are you here? Yes. Come on up. If I call your name, please come on up. Next speaker is Cora. Is anybody here with that name, Cora? Ethan Metcalf. Come on up. Jane Damien? Did I call your name? Did I call your name?
Victoria?
No, I said Cora.
Got it.
Jane?
Yes.
Cora?
Yes.
Is that you? Okay. Kennewick, you're speaking on items 1 through 7 and your general public comment. So that's 2 minutes for all your items that you are going to speak on, and then you're going to get an additional 1 minute of general public comment. Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. Good to see you all again. I'm sure you're happy to see me. Because, yeah, I was running for City Council in District 14, and I'm white from San Francisco, so no one's really listening to me. Because, yeah, I'm not Latino. And anyway, so this is all about basically cleaning up, keeping the city clean, and the homeless, and the sanitation department. I live in the historic core on Broadway. My neighborhood is now filled with trash bags from the city receptacles. They go around daily, empty them, leave them on the sidewalks to be picked up sometime. So that's around in the evening. So the CARE program in my neighborhood made a mess of it, but in Skid Row, which is right here, see the white? It doesn't have a bid. So this is all cleaned up by CARE. Are any of you actually listening? No. So anyway, they've done amazing work in Skid Row because it's really clean now. I have to walk there to Licata, where I go there for treatment, mental illness, and addiction. Yeah, it's really fun. They have, it's a 3-week wait period time now. There really aren't services in Skid Row for that, but that's okay. Yeah, that's what they need. It's not there. So now, and then the fashion district took away a lot of their trash cans. So that was a big mess. Of course, small businesses can't afford the trash cleanup. So they just leave it on the street. They pay homeless people to move it to another location for them. I found that out from a parking meter lady when I asked her on the street. And, you know, the bids are really interesting because I try to get the Hearst Examiner building added on to the historic core bid because it's a historic building, you know, designed by Julie Morgan. But South Park snatched it up just one day earlier. I came to City Hall. Anyway, so let's see. And it's funny because the CARE program launched in October 1st of 2019, and you're already planning to reevaluate it, like less than 4 months later? Well, the city definitely gets a star for forming committees that cost a lot of money but get nothing done. Kind of, you know, it's really, really frustrating to see all this happening around me. And, you know, so, and then here's, you know, Kevin DeLeon will probably be the new council member. And he's talking with Tanya Boykin. She knows me and my family from San Francisco, the Weingard Center. It's interesting because Jess Lal, president of CCA, was in city. Do I still have a minute, or is that all?
Your 1 minute of general public comment.
Okay. So yeah, it was interesting. I was in the council chamber, and I've been trying to meet Jessica Lal for a little while, and so I sat down next to her, and Tanya Boykin was next on the other side of her. And when I introduced myself, she turned her back on me. And then shortly after, Tanya Boykin had to get up and leave because she knew me. Anyway, so I tried running for city council, didn't get much done, and so now this is going to be a coffee table book with all the different maps of LA and pictures of politicians and budgets and a city designed for corruption and chaos. And yeah, probably won't get printed here in LA, but there are plenty of people around the nation, and Gavin's probably going to run for president, so Fiona Moss, state treasurer, she told me I didn't need a bodyguard running for city council, but she advised me against it. Now I know why. Anyway, have a great day.
Thank you. Next speaker is Cora. You're speaking on item number 1 and your 1 minute of general public comment. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Cora, and I'm here with Services Not Sweeps. I'm speaking as an organizer with Services Not Sweeps and with the DSA Street Watch, as someone who's monitored sweeps and had many conversations with my unhoused neighbors. And I'm also speaking as the mother of a young child who's sick of hearing people invoke the children as a reason to sweep encampments out of sight and force the unhoused out of the neighborhood and to, subject them to increased police enforcement. So I'd like to speak to the, proposed step up in enforcement of 5611 and of sweeps on homeless encampments. I think that some members of City Council have been prioritizing the complaints of people who claim they feel uncomfortable when they see unhoused people or encampments. These members seem to forget that unhoused people in their districts are also their constituents, and that their focus should be on making those people comfortable, providing compassion and services and ultimately housing, and not on making housed people feel comfortable by pushing the problem out of sight through more policing and more enforcement. So instead of doing what the CARE program promised, which was to prioritize outreach, to allow people to keep their important belongings through different types of less enforcement of 5611, and to provide services such as bathrooms, trash pickups, and water fountains, the city's reverting to this more punitive approach, and we're seeing that on the ground and from reports from our unhoused neighbors. So I just want to reiterate that I think that we should be teaching our children compassion and solidarity and generosity towards all of our neighbors and not fear of our unhoused neighbors. And the fact that it's simply untrue that the homeless pose a threat to public safety, and the city should be doing more to help keep the encampments livable.
Thanks, Cora.
Not to mention building more housing and shelters rather than stoking myths and fears about the unhoused.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ethan, followed by Jane. If I call your name, please come on up. Nicholas Amos, are you here? You want to come on up? Sabrina Johnson. Ethan, you have 1 minute for item number 1, and your 1 minute for general public comment. Go ahead.
My name's Ethan. I'm with the Sunrise Movement, Ground Game LA, and also Services Not Sweeps. Good afternoon, Nuri and council members. Less than 6 months ago, the Sunrise Movement stood with you here as allies, praising you for your commitment to the climate crisis as you established this committee. I am deeply ashamed as a movement member who works with my unhoused neighbors regularly that you are using this committee to discuss further criminalization of the homeless. Environmental justice is a housing and homelessness justice issue. Where are the services? Where are the extra dumpsters, regular trash pickups, the toilets, the sharps containers, the power washing? Instead, you ramp up sanitation's role and decrease services. This is a social justice issue and not just an environmental issue. Your failure to build equitable housing and coziness with developers has created this housing and homelessness issue, and now you want to further punish the victims of this with punitive measures.
You have your 1 minute of general.
Throwing away personal documents and identification, sentimental items, things you and I need every day to survive. Increasing 56.11 enforcement is wrong. 3 people dying on the streets of our city a day is wrong. The blame lies with you and your failure to provide both housing and services. Dispersing unhoused folks. Nuri, you banished 100 people from the Sepulveda Basin, and Mitch, you attempted to sweep 60-plus unhoused folks from Echo Park last week to God knows where before this week's count may get to get your numbers down. It may get your numbers down, but it will not fix the problem, nor will it assuage the guilt that sits firmly on your shoulders that comes from this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jane. You're speaking on item number 1 and general public comment?
Yes.
Is that correct? Go ahead.
My name is Jane Demian. I'm the Eagle Rock Neighborhood Council Homelessness Liaison, but I am speaking as an individual today. I wanted to thank the committee for forming the environmental justice portion of your committee, and what that means is that environmental justice applies to all communities, rich and poor. And that means those people who are indigent also need to have sanitation pickup, as well as the rich communities. What we're experiencing is that poor communities and the unhoused are not experiencing sanitation, trash pickup, and biohazard pickup. What we'd like to see in the work that we're doing with the encampments, we do outreach and engagement with encampments in Eagle Rock. We'd like to see more trash receptacles. We'd like to see more sharps containers. We have no services, no access centers. We don't have any bridge housing. So we really need services, and our people on the street need housing. But in the meantime, I was encouraged by the fact that there was a care team that was coming out to Eagle Rock. I'll keep going.
Your 1 minute of general public comment.
Thank you. I was encouraged that there was a care team coming to Eagle Rock. I witnessed the care teams, I observed, and I thought it was really well done. We prepared our homeless neighbors in advance, letting them know that the care team was coming. And because of that, I think they were very cooperative. They knew what to do. We knew exactly how to help, and we got lots of information. I think the care teams need to be kept in place, that the sanitation workers and LAZA need to work together, along with those of us on the ground who are experiencing this work with our unhoused neighbors. If we can work together and forget this idea of criminalizing the unhoused. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas, hold on for just a second. I'm going to call a couple of more speakers. Tommy Kelly, are you here? Come on up. Gracia Lopez Reyes. Did I pronounce that correctly? Gracia?
Gracias.
Gracia. Go ahead, Nicholas, followed by Sabrina. You're speaking on item number 1 and your general public comment.
Correct. Hi, my name is Nicholas Emmons. I volunteer with K-Town for All. A new report that just came out titled Visual Cleanliness and Program Adjustments encourages a hardline approach to enforcement as opposed to services in dealing with the homelessness crisis in Los Angeles. This document wants to enforce 5611 as strongly as possible, and wants to enforce 5611 as strongly as possible, which is inhumane and displaces people. I know Councilmember O'Farrell just shook his head and said, no, not true, in reference to the Echo Park sweep that just happened. Well, I mean, you should know what's going on in your council district, so you're all responsible for this happening in your council districts, and you should be doing something to stop it. Same with the Sepulveda Basin, everything else that's displacing
Your general
people.
public comment.
That's been displacing people. We need courage on housing, not these irresponsible policies on enforcement. In a city where 3 unhoused people die per day, it's irresponsible, and frankly, it's life-threatening to continue these strong enforcement policies. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas. Sabrina, followed by Tommy. You're speaking on item number 1.
In general.
Hold on for just a second. Can you pull up Sabrina's card, please? Give me just a second. There's a delay in the iPad. You're correct. Item number 1 and general public comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sabrina Johnson, K-Town for All. Nothing too controversial from me today, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, there is a sweep scheduled, there's a cleanup scheduled for this Friday, January 24th at Echo Park Lake. I know there's been some confusion about these in the past, so I went ahead and emailed photos of the notices to each of your council offices, so you have that on file. Also on that email, you'll find the full text of K-Town for All's open letter to City Council calling for a temporary moratorium on cleanups along with accompanying signatures. So if you haven't received that, please check your spam folder or add johnsonsabrina87@gmail.com to your address book. Which brings me to our next item. The annual homeless count is currently underway, and the youth portion of that is not scheduled to wrap until next Friday, January 31st. So if you haven't already, please instruct your staff to reach out to the appropriate district contact to reschedule any Care and Care Plus deployments for the week of February 3rd at the earliest, preferably never. And then lastly, just for me, I do need some clarification on why we're spending 13 times more on enforcement this year than we were 5 years ago when there isn't any evidence that it's actually helping. Seriously, which one of you do I have to sleep with to get to that 38 million diverted to motel vouchers instead of garbage trucks? Please don't say Paul. That's all from me. Okay. I'll check in with you guys on Friday.
Next speaker is Tommy. Hold on for just a second. Let me just call 2 more speakers up. Margie Clark, are you here? Margie? Yes, Maggie Clark. And Victoria? Go ahead, Tommy. You're speaking on general public comment and item number 1.
Yeah, I'm here to say, first and foremost, that 5611 enforcement is cruel and unusual. You all may recognize that term from the 8th Circuit ruling, or 9th Circuit ruling on Martin v. Boise. So, in particular, we have seen enforcement about 5611 in the Schrader enforcement zone in Hollywood be especially cruel and unusual to the point where the city is throwing away trash cans of unhoused residents. I mean, seriously, how do y'all expect people to be clean when the city is taking away trash cans? There was also a city installed a trash can there. They took that away. We've been asking for a dumpster at this encampment for over a year, and yet you all fail to provide any resources for these people to live a normal life, constantly sweeping them. People there don't even know what the enforcement zone is. Why am I the one telling them? Where is the outreach? People there don't even know what LASA is. The failure of the city is astounding. You all tried this shit for a month, and then you throw up your hands and said, oh, well, guess we have to go back to sweeping everything and terrorizing people, because that's what this policy is. It is terrorizing people. When you throw away their home, when you throw away their family's ashes, it is terrorizing people. And when they fight back, when they stand up and get violent, and you come back and say, oh, now we have to throw away everyone's things in this entire zone. That is the definition of discrimination. When one unhoused person commits a violent act against a sanitation worker, and they say, okay, now all unhoused people have to suffer. What the hell is wrong with you? There is a bathroom next to this encampment that costs $5 to use. Where are the bathrooms? Why am I handing out water? Why are you discriminating our unhoused neighbors, not providing them with the same city resources that everyone else has access to? Fucking disgrace.
Grecia, you're speaking on item number 2?
Yes, item number 2.
Okay, go ahead.
So, good afternoon. My name is Grecia Lopez Reyes. I'm with the Don't Waste LA Coalition. First, I want to say that we support the city's commitment to increase educational and outreach efforts for the organics collection program. Learning how to properly separate organic waste collection is paramount to reaching the city's ambitious diversion goals. As we know, diverting organic waste is one of the toughest environmental challenges that we face within the waste industry. And as we all remember, there were several challenges during the first rollout of the Sikla program. And at large, it was partially because education and outreach was lacking. We'd like to ask the city to implement all the best practices that were learned from the initial rollout and avoid repeating the same mistakes that were done in the first time around. Additionally, in order for the city to fulfill its potential as a national leader, we know that source separation is really important, but we recommend that you take seriously instances of commingling done by waste haulers, and that you hold these haulers accountable who engage in these practices. Thank you.
Thanks. Next speaker, Victoria, followed by Maggie. You're speaking on Victoria. Hold on for just a second. Can you bring up her card? You're just speaking on general public comment?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So Mitchell Farrell, 7 minutes from your office in Echo Park, 2 of the Echo Park residents were arrested today for smoking. There is nothing wrong with smoking in a park, and that is where they live. So what are you doing? And you're going to escalate the sweeps with LAPD and LA Sanitations. All of you have played a role in criminalizing the houseless population. They are being harassed by civilians. They are being murdered by LAPD. Last week, Victor Valencia was murdered by LAPD, and we don't know the cop's name. We are not being given footage, and we're not being given any evidence of this 911 call that claims he has a gun. He did not have a gun. So all of you need to work on this. You need to stop the sweeps because you are moving your houseless population around. We all deserve to know what the population is and what you are all doing. You, I know, I tried calling your office, and your office representative lied to me saying that LAPD is not a part of the sweep, but they have been actively a part of the sweep, and it's the Sepulveda Basin, Nuri Martinez.
Thank you. Next speaker, Maggie, you're speaking on item number 1. Is that it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Never done this before. I'm a little nervous,
Okay.
but I appreciate the words of my fellow K-Town for All and Streetwatch LA allies. I want to speak a little bit to the absurdity and just moral bankruptcy of the idea of visual cleanliness, and that the entitlement and the concept that housed people shouldn't have to witness poverty that they benefit from. It's unacceptable, and it's such a transparent way of further victimizing our unhoused population using the rhetoric of community. I feel like everyone on this council and our city generally loves to use the rhetoric of community while simultaneously dividing our communities into housed and unhoused people and pitting us against each other. And that's why we see these increases in violence against our unhoused neighbors. And we all bear responsibility for that, but particularly those of you up here who are using your position of power to, further deepen that divide.
Thank you.
That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Members, there are no other speakers on today's agenda, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, including general public comment. You can go ahead and take a look at the agenda. I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve items number 3 through 10 on consent unless there's any objection.
Yes.
Mr. Koretz?
Just like to take a moment on item 8, so I'd like to pull that.
Item number 8?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and move the rest on consent. Without objection, that will be the order. Go ahead and let's take up item number 8. Let's read that into the record first. Can we go ahead and do that?
Certainly, Madam President. Just a moment. Madam President, item number 8 relates to DDP report relative consideration of a right-of-way permit for the with the National Park Service. National Park Service and the DWP.
All right, Mr. Koretz?
Yeah, just one comment just to put on the record. Given that this involves Grand Canyon lands, I just want to be able to clarify for the public and council that this is not something new. It's not an expansion in the Grand Canyon. It's just an updating of an existing permit.
Good afternoon. I'm Masoud Saburi from LADWP.
Can you get closer to the mic because we can't hear you?
Good afternoon. I'm Masoud Saburi, Director of Real Estate at LADWP. And you're right, we're not changing anything. We're just extending the same agreement we had for 25 years, another 10 years.
Yeah, I appreciate that, especially since a number of public lands are contracting and being opened up. I wanted to clarify that nothing has changed in that area.
Exactly, right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else?
Nope.
So you're good with this?
Good.
All right, so let's go ahead and vote on this item. Are there any objections to moving this item forward? Seeing none, that will be the order. Let's move on to item number 1. If I can please have all departments come on up to the table. Sanitation, LAPD, LASA, and the mayor's office. Good afternoon. So this is a continuation discussion from our follow-up from our December meeting. There was an outline of major concerns, so I hope that you can go through the items that we discussed in December. Do you want to start us off, Mr. Seldivar, or do you like the mayor's office to go first?
I can start.
So before we do that, I think the CLA, do you want to go ahead and state the previous committee request so that we're just all reminded of why we brought this item back?
Certainly, Madam President. So on December 3rd, you continued the matter, your committee continued the matter, and requested the Bureau of Sanitation to report back on 3 key elements, one of which was an action plan to ensure visible improvements to the cleanliness of the city streets. Number 2, an accounting of funds spent to date on these efforts. And number 3, the justification for maintaining the program as is. Those were the 3 elements that you requested to report back on.
Okay, so these committee members, we're all in receipt of your transmittal, so if you want to go ahead and walk us through your report, we can do so at this time. Do you want to go first, or want to let Mr. Buckner go next, or?
No, that's an easy question, Madam President. Of course, I will yield to the mayor's office.
Mr. Buckner, do you want to start us off?
Sure, Madam President, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. My name is Brian Buckner. I'm the mayor's chief of homelessness operations and street strategies. In that capacity, I now direct the city's Unified Homelessness Response Center, the UHRC, in addition to coordinating general street strategies and our street-based response to unsheltered homelessness. So first, let me just start off and say we acknowledge that when the CARE program launched back in October, that there were a number of bumps in the road. And those challenges, I think, can be distilled into a few major buckets. One is communication and coordination between the agencies, but also between council offices, the UHRC, and the CARE program partners. We have laid out a number of changes, both that have been made and that will be made going forward citywide in sanitation's report back that hopefully have addressed those concerns, and happy to answer any questions once we get through the report. Also, the issue of scheduling and ensuring council priorities are reflected in the schedule was expressed both by members of this committee and council offices generally. And hopefully you have found that with the reintegration of the Sanitation Community Services Group and with some better coordination between your offices and the UHRC, that you have full confidence that council priorities are the priority, both for the CARE and the CARE Plus teams. And so those calendars should reflect 100% of your priorities for your district, and that includes any response to homeless encampments, but also any illegal dumping sites. That's also something that a part of the CARE team's operations. And then lastly, the work between the partners, I think that there was a number of pieces of feedback that we received, again, both from this committee, but also from council offices generally, about decisions that were being made in the field. And we believe, and I have full confidence, and our office does as well, that those issues of confusion have been ironed out, and that, to be very clear, the decisions in the field about any materials in the public right-of-way that are impounded or stored or disposed of, those decisions are made by sanitation environmental compliance inspectors. There's no question about that. The field decisions are not made by the outreach workers. It's not a decision that the outreach workers themselves want to make. That's not a position that they want to be in. And so we've made that abundantly clear and have provided and will continue to provide ongoing training to all CARE team members so that that message is reinforced with those teams. And so with that, I think it'd be a good opportunity to have Enrique Zaldivar talk about some of the more specific program changes, again, that have been made and some that you can expect to see citywide as of today.
Go ahead, Mr. Saldivar.
Thank you, Brian. Madam President, members of the committee, over the course of the last 3 months, you have given us the opportunity to not only grow in capacity, but to also, and to add services like hygiene centers and self-managed trash collection in many of these places. But you have also given us the time for our staff of now nearly 250 employees to have gained a broader and deeper understanding of LA Sound's crucial role in the CARE program and of our human relationship with the homeless communities. And obviously, as Brian alluded, of our interdependency with our partner agencies, our other care partners, namely the council district staff, your council district staff, the mayor's UHRC, LASA, and LAPD. Building on this broader understanding and in direct response to your committee's clear direction that CARE achieve visible outcomes, starting this week, we have made the following adjustments to the CARE program deployment. And Brian alluded to those, but we will now have illegal dumping service 7 days a week. This is new in that we hadn't had necessarily 7 days a week with existing resources. We're not asking for additional money for that. We're staggering schedules. That's how we're trying to accommodate there being a response 7 days a week as opposed to things piling up over the weekend. Both the CARE and the CARE Plus teams will be able to post, authorize, and conduct comprehensive cleanups with a 24-hour advance notice. Previously, only the CARE Plus team performed this function. This change will ensure that the city's approach is right-sized for the location. CARE teams will be used to conduct comprehensive cleanings at smaller illegal dumping sites or locations with smaller encampments. Larger and chronic illegal dumping sites and locations with larger encampments will continue to be addressed by CARE Plus teams. Council offices, as Brian alluded to, will play a key lead role in determining priorities of locations, etc. Every CARE and CARE Plus team will be fully capable of enforcing LAMC 5611 at every location. The LAPD HOPE officers, which as of last week had gone on a zone defense, will be pre-deployed along with CARE teams at sites where we have documented histories of potential escalation or aggressive, potentially confrontational behavior.
Can you speak more clearly?
Sir, ma'am, please don't interrupt this meeting.
The LAPD's primary role will remain ensuring the safety of all people, not just the CARE team, not just the House Angelinos, but the public at large that we interact with. LA Sound and LAPD will conduct operations on city-owned property operated by the Department of Rec and Parks. Up until now, was a quite onerous coordination effort that would take between us, Rec and Parks, and LAPD and LASA to be able to service a park. We now have an understanding with Rec and Parks that in which they have granted us access to service a park without necessarily fully coordinated with them beforehand. LA Sand CARE team members and our partners, LASA, outreach workers, the UHRC, and LAPD will continue to have refreshed training on the right implementation of Enforcement 5611. We understand this is an area that requires our utmost careful approach to ensure that the rights of everybody are respected. So we intend to do that by having this continuous refresher training. As staff move on, new staff need to go through all of the training. And that's something that we'll remain very vigilant about throughout this new approach. More details are in the report itself, Madam President.
Anyone else have anything else to add? No? All right, so you did touch on many of the issues that were discussed at our previous meeting, but I'd like to go through the report a little better. So on page 3, On page 3, you state that the mayor's chief of homelessness and operations and street strategies will be directing the efforts, and I quote, carrying out the mayor's and the council's priority. So can you clarify that? What is the mayor's office priority in cleaning up the public right-of-way? I just want to make sure that is it the same sense of urgency that the council has? Are we on the same page, or do you think that there's a disconnect?
Sure. Well, my hope is that we're on the same page. The mayor's priority and our office's priority has always been to ensure clean and safe public spaces, and to do so while carefully balancing the needs of both our housed and our unhoused neighbors. And by stating unequivocally in the report that my responsibility and the responsibility of the UHRC is to ensure that council priorities along with mayor's priorities are aligned, and that we will carry those out to our fullest extent.
And the report also indicates that Rec and Parks will no longer conduct operations at our park sites. Instead, we're leaving it up to sanitation. Why are we taking them out of this effort?
Madam President, I think that was an overextension of the statement I made earlier, in which they have given us access whenever we need it. It does not mean that they are pulling themselves out of this.
Well, that's not clear, because the way I read it, it just feels like we're missing out on services rather than enhancing it.
Correct. So that's a misstatement on our part. It's the interpretation of the newly given access that they have given us is for whenever we are at a park or at a location that has both street and parks in the same location, that if we need to access the park for completing the service, that they have given us access to do that without first having to notify them or getting approval from them.
So the program funding, as I see it, has skyrocketed from $3 million back in 2014, 2015 fiscal year to almost $39 million today. So if I have the math correctly, that's $125 million total that we spent over the last 6 years. So in your opinion, what do we have to show for that?
Well, Madam President, I think clearly you articulated what the measurement of this effort had been in our metrics, while rooted on operational metrics, tonnage, service locations, preempting potential public health risks and what have you. That hasn't risen to the visible progress that all of you expect to see. So I think in as much as we can articulate all of the operational metrics, frankly, there's been benefit all around, but it's difficult to substantiate it visibly. So the indication and the direction that your committee gave us is that it has to be visible to any and all Angelenos. That's where we want to make a greater impact.
Members, I have other questions, but I want to give you an opportunity to also ask questions. To my right, Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to flag that my field staff and I believe that the program is working better, and that the efforts previously to keep council office and sanitation out of the process didn't work that well. I think we have a better hybrid, and the balance between offering services and preventing additional trauma was overly balanced away from doing cleanups. And I think it's now become more of an appropriate middle ground where we can do more to protect the health of our residents and of the homeless themselves. The needs of each council district, I think, are unique enough that I can't overstress the importance of working with the individual council offices. And I would say some of the problems we ran into could have been avoided if we had done that from the beginning. Couple things. One, last time we asked for a report back on progress being made towards reducing the number and size of encampments. And other than scattering them around or talking about H and bridge housing, which is slowly starting to come around. What are the other methodologies being used to do that, if any?
Part and parcel of our deployment now, Councilmember, will have expanded hygiene services. It's important to our hygiene centers that while we're conducting a cleanup, that we create the opportunity for folks to have access to hygiene locations. So that's another metric will now be part of our reporting. We have said that under the 5611 protocols, we will be enforcing the tents being up or not up in the hours that are permitted. So that's going to be something else that will be different in this new deployment.
What about illegal dumping? I think this is one of the bigger problems. It's not the fault of the homeless, but it's an attractive target for folks that want to illegally dump and make it look like it's the possessions of the homeless. Have we looked at more serious enforcement of this, seriously increasing the amount of fines and running surveillance at some chronic locations, being able to arrest and prosecute violators and hit them hard with penalties and send that message throughout the city? Have we looked at doing that? Are we in the process of doing that?
Just, and sorry that we did not include any of that information, but we have been doing quite a bit in that front as well. We have over 15 surveillance cameras up and running now. We have over, I want to say over 300 cases at different stages of enforcement. And so we're quite busy in that front as well.
If I can add to that, Councilman, just recently in a meeting related to another issue, it came to our attention that a particular division in the metropolitan area had come across a homeless encampment that looked like it was exponentially expanding. But the astute senior lead officer began to examine some of the detritus that was associated with this and noticed that all of the shipping labels had been removed from all of the things that were dumped into the area adjacent to this encampment. So after a conversation between myself and the area captain, they started to set up nighttime surveillance and put extra patrol requests in, and they've already reached out through our UHRC, partners in order to ensure that there will be a sanitation crew that will be available if and when we take the people who are doing this into custody. We have reason to believe that the individuals that are involved in some of the local businesses are actually paying the people who live in that encampment to dump their trash in that area. And so we will be doing surveillance in order to get full prosecution on those individuals. So that's an example of how we're working with sanitation on making that piece happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Cedillo, do you have any questions on this item, sir?
Yes. So tell me about the UHRC. I'm interested to know where it's located, who staffs it, what's the training and background of the staff, goals, plans, and benchmarks. And then I have specific questions about the location or the utilization of restrooms, showers, and laundry services for the community.
The city's Unified Homelessness Response Center is a physical location in the city's Emergency Operations Center, so over on East Temple, where, sorry?
Where is it?
It's in the Emergency Operations Center, the city's Emergency Operations Center over on East Temple.
700 East.
And it's located actually right off of the main emergency floor. So you have that large, extremely large room. When there's a level 1 activation or level 2 activation, it's right off of that main floor. And the intention behind the UHRC was to create a location where departments would be able to co-locate and be able to coordinate directly with one another on the city's street level response to unsheltered homelessness. And so currently there are around 15 or 16 different city departments and partners like LASA, Caltrans, and Metro who have staff assigned to the UHRC to ensure better communication and coordination directly. And the staff that's there varies from department to department, but we have Rec and Parks, we have the Department on Disability, we have LAPD, Fire Department, Sanitation, LASA is there, again, Caltrans and Metro, and we have, I think, a number of other departments who regularly participate and communicate with the UHRC. So it's really to create a centralized coordination platform guiding the city's response.
How many staff?
The actual number of staff persons is probably somewhere between 30 to 35.
What's your hours of operation?
Currently, the hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then in the event of any emergencies we saw during the brush fires or during the need to open the winter shelters early when there's weather-related cold or rain, then the UHRC can activate it at any point in time.
Goals?
The goals are primarily to improve the city's overall street-level response to unsheltered homelessness. It really is about improving coordination and communication. And to get to the next question about benchmarks and metrics, those are ongoing discussions. That's quite frankly something that the UHRC has struggled with in terms of measuring its success. When we started the UHRC in April of 2018, it really was using departments' existing metrics to see if we could reduce the MyLA 311 backlog or reduce the time in response to providing a cleanup or outreach and engagement. And since then, we've recognized that those are department metrics and that's not necessarily appropriate for the UHRC to evaluate itself on those metrics. And so we're working with local universities, we're working with departments and council offices to get their input on what we should be tracking in order to measure our overall success.
You started in April of 2018?
Correct, April 30th, 2018.
So there's no measure or no metric to measure your progress at this moment?
Well, currently the CARE program has doubled the number of cleanup operations in a month. And so currently under CARE, there are about 1,600 different cleanup operations that happen per month. We measure the number of outreach and engagements, the number of placements, the number of opportunities to improve the overall response. So if there's a request that we coordinate with Caltrans, for example, we can speed up that process to ensure coordination with Caltrans that day so that we don't have to wait weeks and weeks or months in terms of coordinating operations on adjacent properties.
I don't know if this is for you, but how many new restrooms have we put online? How many temporary, emergency, et cetera?
Sure.
And both showers and laundry services?
Sure. Good afternoon. Gabe Miranda, Division Manager for LA Sanitation and Environment. So currently we have 4 mobile hygiene units that are operational. We have just over 1,700 individuals that have utilized the mobile hygiene unit services. And actually this week we're launching Trailer 5. So we're moving towards having 13 trailers operating citywide, and they've been quite successful to this point.
In addition to the CARE mobile shower program, there's also the Shower Stop program, which is utilizing 4 shower trailers that were provided to the city by the county. And so those move to different locations across the city, in addition to the Pit Stop program, which council approved, that provides additional bathroom services at 17 different locations across the city.
And you said 4 mobile units. Is this Shower of Hope that you're engaged with on the showers?
No, so it's actually not Shower of Hope. The trailers that I'm talking about were actual shower trailers that the county's Office of Emergency Management wasn't currently utilizing, and so they have provided them to the city at no cost, but they're operated by the same nonprofit organizations that run the Pit Stop program, which is 5 Keys and Urban Alchemy.
So these 4 showers are in addition to the showers?
Correct.
These augment.
Correct.
And laundry service?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of any laundry service that's directly provided by the city, certainly not through these programs. Although our understanding, and maybe Heidi can speak to this from LASA's perspective, our expectation is that these programs and these nonprofits that are operating the Pit Stops and the Shower Stop program do coordinate with Laundry of Love and other organizations that are providing laundry services for the unhoused.
And then are you tracking the placement, people moving from homelessness to housing?
We do through LASA.
And so you have numbers on that?
I don't off the top of my head, but if you would like, we can provide, if you're looking for numbers since the beginning of the UHRC, we absolutely can provide you those numbers.
Thank you.
Mr. Gakor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you all. Thank you all for listening to the comments that were provided in this committee last time, and I think largely responding to them. I want to put a little bit of a frame on this because some of the public speakers were referring to this as being, a poor alternative, for example, to motel vouchers. And clearly that's true, but these are different programs that serve different functions. Anyone who thinks that the CARE program is a housing program is not correct. It isn't. It serves different goals. At the same time, we really can't measure the success of this program by whether it eliminates all visible trace of street homelessness. That's not its purpose, and that I don't know that that's even a goal that we would want to set. But I will say that what we were doing before was a wholesale failure. Moving people around from under a bridge to 100 feet away in order to do a thorough cleanup of that bridge and then have them move back an hour later really didn't help anyone. It was necessary purely for public health and sanitation reasons, but it didn't accomplish any long-term benefits. I think is the short answer to the chair's question about what we have to show for it. Under the previous regime, we have almost nothing to show for the money that we've spent on cleanups, other than the fact that for a while, the sidewalk and the given area was a little bit cleaner and necessary, but not effective in terms of long-term solutions. So I very much appreciate the new approach that is represented by CARE. The goals include remedying or ameliorating, I guess, the public health consequences of homelessness, both for the housed and the unhoused population, and especially probably the latter. Second, we do have an obligation to the public, to all members of the public, to ensure that the rights of way are accessible to all to use. And then third, there are absolutely quality of life and visual appeal and blight issues that can't just simply be ignored. And I think CARE has, at least in my district, in my experience, has been quite effective in achieving those goals. And having a softer touch on the relationship with our homeless population has worked in my district. We have taken requests even from our homeless neighbors that are encamped about what they need, and we've tried to provide that. We have almost 100 new trash cans that have gone up in my district that sanitation is picking up regularly, and the homeless population is using them and keeping their own area much cleaner and much more sanitary for them and for the surrounding community. I have noticed a significant visual improvement because of CARE. And at the same time, we have a better opportunity for realistic outreach that, is built on building up trust. Because the old way of doing it, having people in uniform show up and then having a LASA worker say, by the way, I'd like to tell you about some things that are available to you. It's just, that was not the right model for social service outreach. And I think we're getting closer to the right balance with what CARE does. So I actually very much appreciate the program. I appreciate it was a rocky rollout. Everything's rocky when it rolls out, typically. But I think that you've all been responsive to the concerns that have been expressed to you by this committee and by probably all 15 council members at one time or another in trying to be responsive to that. So that being said, I never miss an opportunity to cite some things that could still be improved. One is that we still have a problem, at least in my experience, with LASA scheduling training across all of its employees at the same time, resulting in cancellation of CARE and CARE Plus deployments. And I just think that they have to coordinate that schedule better. They have to do it in a way that it doesn't impact all employees at the same time so that they can balance training with actually doing the work. We have had reports that there has been some inconsistent messaging sometimes by CARE, by the folks who are out there doing CARE work about 5611 and what's allowed and what isn't allowed. And this is the downside of the softer touch that comes with CARE, because sometimes when an individual is told, well, we're not going to take that, they think that that means that that thing is legal under 5611. And then when the CARE Plus comes in and they take it, the person is confused because they've gotten inconsistent messaging. So it's a communications issue. It's a very challenging audience for communication, and yet that's an issue that I think we could do a better job of. We already addressed the parks issue. It has been a real big problem when the sidewalk is cleaned up and then the park is not. So I'm glad that we're fixing that. And then the last suggestion I would have that maybe we need to put some thought into is expanding the radius around CARE Plus cleanups, because we still have the issue of things being moved just outside the radius and then things being promptly, bulky items, illegal things, being moved promptly back because they were moved outside of the noticed radius zone, and so we couldn't take it, or didn't. Could, because it's illegal. We could, but we didn't. So, so that's that. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Bless you. Couple of questions. So, our LASA outreach workers are in regular contact, obviously, with during the CARE operations, and now that it's district focused, it's more regular, and the ongoing relationship gets developed more effectively than when we scatter outreach workers all around. But I'm wondering to what degree the LASA outreach workers in CARE are interfacing with our LAPD HOPE officers, who also have those ongoing relationships and understanding of the individuals involved. And I think if they are not communicating, they should be, in order to find the best solutions for particular problems and for providing service to particular individuals. So, Commander, maybe you could speak to that.
So as you know, with the adoption of the zone coverage model, the zones themselves did not change the makeup of the HOPE units. So the Valley HOPE team was still in the Valley, the Central HOPE team was still in Central, et cetera. Part of why we were so enthusiastically in support of the model at its inception is that both our partners at Sanitation and LASA were adopting the regional deployment and regional supervision model to maintain not only the consistency of the teams, but the consistency consistency of the supervisors. And so while there were some changes from both of our partners and in the teams that actually got permanently assigned out to those areas, and there were the relationship growing pains of the officers had been used to working with certain teams out in the valley, and now they have to work with new people. So there was a little bit of uptake issues with that, but the communication continues not only between the teams in the field, the HOPE officers, and their counterparts that are actually working the HOPE details, but at the supervision level. And then kind of going back to Councilman Cedillo's question about the makeup and the purpose of the UHRC, one of the things that we find as LAPD is most useful about the UHRC is it being a deconfliction center. So the second in command of my outfit, the Homeless Coordination Office, is my representative at the UHRC. He, Lieutenant 2 Yasir Golani, and 3 police officers regularly staff the UHRC. And so when those conflicts if conflicts or misunderstandings get beyond the supervision in the field talking, then the deconfliction can occur at the UHRC by management level decision makers there, so that there's consistent messaging going out into the field. So the relationship exists at the ground game level, at the supervision level, at the management level, and then my relationship with Nathaniel and Victor and our counterparts at LASA and my friends over at the Department of Sanitation, so it also exists on the executive level.
Okay. I'm really most interested in the ground level. So that's happening on a regular basis?
Yes, sir. The same officers are in the field in the same places with the same teams. Okay. And they generally cover the same zones, which would be LAPD divisions of responsibility. So they're now getting comfortable with the regularity with which the other entities' teams are rolling out.
And I get that they're still there, if they're still in the same place. What I'm driving at is, are they sort of case conferencing? Because people cite Utah, for example, all the time, and how successful Utah has in solving their homeless problem and all that. Yeah. Granted, you could fit all of Utah probably in my district, but that's another issue. But the big strength that they've had is in personalizing outreach to unique individuals and understanding the need of each unique individual and communicating about it. All hands on deck to fix Joe's issue. And that's been their model that has been very successful. And I feel like we're much bigger, and sometimes that's harder. But here we have that opportunity with our LASA outreach, with our HOPE officers, with our sanitation employees and everybody to kind of work together to solve, an individual's issues if they're communicating.
So to your point, this might be a victim of our own success at the level of care. And let me explain that for a second. Because the zone model was intended to provide coverage throughout an area instead of individual teams, and one of the metrics that we looked at is the number of times that police were requested in relation to the number of total care operations. That number was 0.03% of all care operations in the month of October, rose to 4.3% in the month of November, and then 8.2% in the month of December. So at the highest point of contact, we're still under 10% of requests coming in from either the sanitation directly or LASA through sanitation for LAPD intervention. Now, at the beginning of the rollout of the program, senior lead officers responded to Care Plus locations to do an original site assessment along with the sanitation supervisor, the ECI, and LASA. Because of the success of the zone model coverage, we've been able to remove the senior lead officers from that picture and give that job exclusively to HOPE officers. So HOPE officers are interfacing daily with Care Plus teams, and they're interfacing as needed with their care counterparts. But the frequency with which they're responding to care locations is very low because the zone model is working. Yeah. The interaction directly between LASA and the sanitation workers in the field consistently every day is creating those relationships that make police intervention less necessary.
Okay.
I wanted to just add a little bit to what Commander Graham indicated, and it goes to your earlier question, Council Member, about the cross-training that has taken place and will continue to go on. Sanitation workers have been trained on LASA outreach protocols and efficacies. We have been trained on de-escalation techniques by LAPD. There's been cross-training by all three field entities that have happened already and will continue to happen, so that everybody is complementary to each other, know enough about each other's business, but when it comes to the field command on the determination of what falls under the 5611, that is done by our field commander, which is the ECI in charge of the operation, because there's always room for interpretation, and we check with each other, but in the end, the environmental compliance inspector will be the one determining what is a public health risk, what falls under 5611, what doesn't. And so we will try to eliminate decision-making confusion in the field by having that kind of command in the operations commander.
Okay, so that anticipated my next question, which is about the chain of command. So the ECI is in command of CARE and CARE Plus operations. And what happens in the field underneath that bridge, the final decision maker is the ECI.
When it comes to enforcement of 5611, yes.
Okay. Okay. And by the way, as soon as I talked about taking care of Joe's needs, Joe started sneezing. So bless you, Joe. You need anything? You okay? All right. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can I just follow up on the case conferencing model? Thank you. One of the things that sanitation articulated in the report back was that the UHRC has brought on board an area coordinator. She's actually a social worker who had been working in the mayor's crisis response team. And her sole responsibility is to apply that case conferencing model to place-based strategies. So we appreciate that line of thinking and believe that going forward that approach will help dig down into what an individual's needs are and how this partnership can help provide for those needs.
It's a great opportunity with CARE, and we just can't miss that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In relation to adjustments made to the CARE and CARE Plus processes since the rollout, can you take us through the outreach and engagement and or case approach to people experiencing homelessness once a site is posted and scheduled for a cleanup? Can you take us through what the outreach and engagement looks like? How many touches are there? How much outreach is there? How many times in advance of the scheduled cleanup? Can you take us through that and how that's different since we've made the adjustments to the CARE and CARE Plus teams?
Do you want to take the first stab and I can weigh in? So I'm Heidi Marston. I'm the interim executive director of LASA. So thanks for having me here. Related to the CARE Plus model in particular, those are the cleanups that require the posting ahead of time, so they have much more active engagement. And generally speaking, our CARE teams have been out engaging with those individuals prior to the CARE Plus cleanup. So it varies from site to site in terms of how many times they've been out there, but the idea is that a CARE Plus activity would not be a surprise to the individuals working in the encampments, and that the teams going out there through the CARE model are actively communicating so that when CARE Plus arrives, it's not a surprise.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, if you could address, once a posting goes up for a cleanup, there's anxiety in some of these locations. How do the outreach workers convey what actually is going to take place, and if someone has concerns or questions about it, how they can answer those questions or concerns?
Yeah, that's been a really big focal point of our training, actually, so I appreciate you asking, especially around 5611. The outreach workers are uniquely poised to connect people to services and try to get them moved from the streets into a home. However, their role is often working with individuals who have these built relationships to say what are the things that are needed and what can you keep, what has to go, and walking, frankly, a fine line between not offering legal advice, not offering their own opinions, but really just handing them the documentation to say this is what is required and what isn't. And so through UHRC and kind of evolving this model over time, that's what we've been working to perfect, is how can the outreach workers best support the activities, but also make sure that they're not stepping into the lane or the boundaries of what ECIs are supposed to be calling or what the CARE Plus activities are, and focusing that on a more service-enriched and getting people connected that way.
Thanks for that. And I think one additional opportunity is we've rolled out now 6 locations of hygiene units and mobile showers, et cetera, these services that we offer at some of the more well-known locations, and we're about to do another one. I think there's an opportunity at these sites on that day of service for more engagement from LASA. And I don't know if that's part of how this is evolving into those services as well. But I certainly think it's a golden opportunity so that the intensive outreach can continue, to continue building the trust, to continue encouraging folks to accept assistance and getting people on a pathway to housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it? I just want to circle back. I know we have four very distinct agencies here today. I just want to ensure that everyone's on the same page and ultimately who's in charge and who has the last say when you roll out to a cleanup. Is everyone on the same page in terms of who's in charge and who has the last say?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to get back to who's in charge.
The ECI is in charge of the on-field operations. They're the ones that make the determination as to what it is that the environment needs. If it shifts to a criminal matter and the police are called in for an intervention, 99% of the time that we've been called in the last 3 months, there's been automatic compliance. At that point, it immediately shifts back to the ECI and the police take a step back. If there isn't compliance, if there is another instance where law enforcement has to take the lead because a crime has been committed over and above the environmental piece, then the LAPD takes care of that piece and then returns operational command to the ECI.
Yeah, and in addition, I just want to mention, since it wasn't referenced, we also have our senior environmental compliance inspectors. So those are the supervisors over the environmental compliance inspectors. These supervisors are in the field regularly, so we have that chain of command on site with each of the environmental compliance inspectors. So I just want to make reference to that.
And as you implement some of these changes, how will you ensure that we actually have benchmarks to meet? Because the report does not speak to any benchmarks or even a reference to a starting point. So, I mean, I know next month we're going to have you back here, and you're going to probably talk to us about tonnage and locations and so on. But how are you? You have no outline in terms of any benchmarks that I can actually reference to in your report.
We want to develop our metrics in this new deployment with full input from your district offices. We have been now reactivating the CleanStat sessions, which had all been about metrics and other intelligence related to data that go on in the field. We will have those with your district staff, and we're going to develop metrics that address the kinds of things that will be most relevant to the committee and the council. The tonnage, some of the other stuff we've already reported, that will continue to be gathered. It's important as a way of us using it as a tool for how we recalibrate on efficiencies that come from an operational point of view. One example, and I just want to mention it because it was something that you also brought up, the travel time that it takes us to get to our location, how much time we would spend on the road. We've gained efficiencies there, not because it comes at any other expense, but just us having a shorter travel time. So that's the kind of stuff that we will go over with the CleanStat with your district staff. So I don't have a full answer of all the metrics, Madam President, right now, but we will, and we'll start producing reports along those lines.
Thank you, Mr. Saldivar. I just want to reiterate that the status quo just simply wasn't working. I know we have a lot of talented people that work for the city. They can help us figure this out. And we'll continue to have you come back to this committee and report on a monthly basis until we get to the level of satisfaction that Mr. Krikorian has. Because quite frankly, that level of service was not being seen in my district, and this is why we brought this forward. Having said that, I think it's important to reiterate that this council will continue to uphold the city's obligation to continue to have accessible public right-of-way. At the same time, to meeting our obligation in terms of providing services and housing to an unhoused population. But we cannot believe or even fear that doing so comes at the expense of the other. We need to do, both of them need to be working, both of them are parallel obligations that we need to uphold ourselves to. So one does not take precedent over the other. We need to be able to do both. So I appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next month. And members, are there any other questions? See none. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item number 2.
Certainly, Madam President.
Rafael, do you want to go ahead and read? This is a verbal update, by the way. This item, I'm going to go ahead, was a motion introduced by Mr. Corrett, so I want to go ahead and read that into the...
Item number 2, beer
Kindly
sanitation.
exit our committee chambers, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Certainly. Beer sanitation report, verbal report relative to the formation of the organics implementation team to increase educational outreach efforts associated with organics collection.
Good afternoon, Dan Myers, LA Sanitation.
Before you start, hold on for just a second. I just want to give Mr. Koretz, did you want to have you have opening comments for this, or do you want to start with the report? What would you like to do?
Let me give one quick opening
Okay,
comment.
let's go ahead and hear from Mr. Koretz.
And then
before we
I'll
get
ask
started.
questions
All right,
after the
thank
report.
you. Go ahead, sir.
Last time we heard this item, I specifically asked for a rating system to be front-loaded to basically demand that the providers step it up on what's one of the most important issues that we as a city can control, which is how we deal with our food waste. Like all methane, the methane created by our food waste, if put in a landfill, is more than 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide over the next 20-year period. And as the horrific fires we're seeing in Australia illustrate, and the ongoing extreme weather events all over the world continue to underline our climate emergency and how much more progressively it's getting worse, it's important that we use the methods at our disposal as soon as possible to the fullest extent possible to either compost or anaerobically digest every bit of food waste from the 4 million people under our jurisdiction. And before I ask substantive questions, I would ask, we've been asking for this for months. Why did we get this report just a few minutes before this meeting so we wouldn't have any time to analyze it? I could be cynical and assume that was intentional. If not, it would be a pretty extreme example of procrastination. Would have been better if we had time to actually analyze all the work that you've done.
Very good. All right. Again, I do want to address, I apologize. It wasn't done on purpose, so you didn't have time. Still, the rating system as it's presented to you is in draft form for discussion. So we'll take whatever questions you have, finalize it, and present with a final rating system or summary of our RSP's efforts towards diversion goals. LA San and the Sikla service providers are actively engaged in pursuing multiple elements of an overall organics management approach, and I'll briefly highlight just what some of those efforts are and what's ongoing. LA San on its own has multiple organics programs. LA San is on track to currently provide organics recycling, food waste recycling in the green bin to all LA San customers by the end of calendar year 2021. So from the LA San side. From the Sikla side, our Sikla organics program has multiple components also. The first component is food rescue. The Sikla service providers have partnered with food rescue and reuse organizations to promote the benefits of donating edible surplus food to their customers. The Sikla contracts stipulate funding for this support, $1,000 per year per 100 customers. The RSPs allocate for reuse, including food rescue. Every Sikla customer receives information and guidance on food rescue programs during their waste assessment and receives further education through quarterly newsletters, social media, RSP's websites, and RSP and LA San events. There's a total of 23 nonprofit food organizations partnering with our RSPs. 7 of those are partnering with multiple RSPs. In total, between January 2018 and November 2019, Food Rescue Partnership has diverted approximately 6,000 tons of food waste from landfills and have funded over $1 million worth of food rescue citywide. The second, and arguably the largest component of the organics program, is the rollout of green bins to all Sikla customers that require them. The RSPs are required to offer source-separated organics collection programs to all of their customers. Customers are informed of the requirements of AB 1826, which requires that, dependent upon a service level, requires a business to subscribe to an organics program. Customers then have the option to elect to participate in an organics program. Although required by the state under the Sikla program, it's actually still an option for a customer to opt into the organics program. To date, over 46,000 tons of material has been collected through the green bin program. We currently have 902 customers that have subscribed to organic service. One of the components of our organics recycling program through Sikla is infrastructure. In order for organics recycling to reach its full potential, processing infrastructure is needed. Infrastructure comes in a variety of forms. LA San is actually undertaking improvements at our Central LA and recycling facility to construct an organics processing facility. Those bids, the RFP is scheduled to go out later this year with the goal of constructing a 300-ton per day facility by the end of 2023. All RSPs are required to take their material to a city-certified processing facility. In October 2019, the Board of Public Works approved the Sikla Facility Certification Program that details the requirements for these facilities. LA San has received over 40 applications for certification, and we're in the process of reviewing those now. The RSPs were required to identify sufficient organic processing facilities. This includes the identification of existing facilities as well as either the improvement or construction of new facilities. 20 organic processing facilities are currently being utilized or identified by our RSPs. 16 of these facilities are owned and operated by the RSPs. 8 of these facilities that are owned and operated by the RSPs are required under contract for improvements. 6 of those 8 are in various stages of improvement. 2 of the 8 have now completed their improvements for organics. 8 of the facilities, although not identified in the contract as a contractual requirement, that are owned by the RSPs are also undergoing improvements to increase their organic processing capabilities. 4 facilities are not owned by the RSPs, but are also going through improvements. As far as the status of our organics program, we actually saw the number of businesses that were participating in green bin collection nearly triple from 2018 to 2019. However, per the contract, we are behind. We are behind on our organics collection. The number of businesses needed to participate in the program need to increase. In 2019, our RSPs focused on outreach and education to customers. In 2019, they provided nearly 25,000 on-site education or waste assessments to our customers. As part of that education program, it included the discussion and the requirements of AB 1826. I would say, though, the focus of the outreach and education was to promote and stabilize the utilization of both the black and blue bin. We noted through our discussions and our contract amendment discussions that one of the concerns was, although they rolled out a blue bin recycling to most customers, noted a number of customers that were using the blue bins in ways that it shouldn't be used, high levels of contamination. So the RSPs really focused the last year on the reduction of that contamination through their outreach and education efforts. All RSPs have identified that during 2020, their focus will continue on outreach and education, but it will shift from a primary focus on blue bin and reducing the contamination, but to also start bringing customers that are required to have organic service to start bringing those in. A number of them have identified a tiered approach where they'll start with, the larger grocery stores or food suppliers and work their way down to restaurants and then others. It does take us to the Sikla performance rating. LA San has prepared a rating system that is used to inform you, the decision makers, when considering a contract renewal. It takes in consideration the RSP's proactive efforts towards reaching the city's diversion goals. LA San is considering two possible rating factors. The first considers the actual tonnage diverted for both the blue and green bins, and compare every year, and compared those to the contractual estimates laid out for each RSP. When we negotiated our contracts with each of our service providers, each of them put together their own plan of how they felt that the rollout of the recycling for blue and green bin would proceed. Some estimated a very high level of participation in the beginning that would then peak and level out. Some estimated that they felt it was going to take a slower gradual curve in the middle and then hit its curve later in the process. But each RSP developed those as part of their contract. It's included in the contract. So what we have the ability to do now is to track, and what you'll see in front of you is a method where we track the actual, it's how much material is collected in the blue bin, converted to a percentage of how much material they collected, and how much material is collected in a green bin. That's then compared to what they estimated they would be collecting in the contract. It also lays out what in year 2023 and then ultimately 2025 of where they need to be from a contractual standpoint for diversion. I think it's important to note that this system is intended to inform on each RHC's progress in rolling out and maximizing the blue bin and the green bin. The information is not used to determine contract compliance. The RSPs are not evaluated every year on whether or not they've met each of the goals in their contract. The contract specifies two specific dates of which will evaluate their process and then potentially assess liquidated damages. That's at the 2023, year 2022, that would be assessed in 2023, and then year 2025. It's also important to note that that the table does not reflect all of the RSP's efforts. We talked about the efforts towards food reuse and food recovery. Those are not reflected in here. What I wanted to be able to present to the committee was a very definitive way of looking at diversion efforts. The numbers that are presented are the numbers that are provided by the RSPs to LA San. The second rating factor that would help identify where each RSP is in their efforts are the number of businesses participating in the Green Bin program. If you look at 1826 lays out the requirements or the threshold that they would say a business needs to subscribe to an organics program. It's pretty much, it is based upon the level of service they have for both their black and blue bins. Those number of customers are laid out in the table that ultimately we would think, we would see that those customers are subject to 1826, and then it lays out the number of customers that are actually participating in a Green Bin program. So in summary, that's the performance system that we're presenting to this committee as a draft, and welcome any question and comments.
Mr. Kurtz, do you want to
Yeah. I'm almost not sure where to start, but the fact that you said you're comparing tonnage and how well they meet their contractual obligations. What I've asked for doesn't have much to do with contractual obligations. What I've asked for is an assessment of how quickly they can implement this and whether they stall in the first year and front load it to the first year where we're not going to find them, but they think they can try to wriggle off the hook and not do it and be in violation of state law, and the state probably won't come after them, etc. So I'm asking for a rating system that doesn't rate their compliance in the first 10 years, but assesses their effectiveness on organics recycling and the speed at which they implement it for their renewal. So if they sit on their hands, if they move really slowly, they might get the 10 years and out. And I want them to realize there'd be real consequences. I mean, that's a lot of why I helped create this program overall in the first place, the Sikla program, because of the organics, and we need to move it fast. What I've seen here doesn't look like a prospective rating. It looks kind of like a status report. What I want is a rating system, how quickly and how much they've done, particularly in the beginning, and a numerical number, perhaps 1 through 10. Are they a 1 or are they a 10? Are they sitting on their hands? Because none of these numbers look great in terms of organics recycling so far. So they have to know they're jeopardizing their renewal. We're not going to hammer them. We've agreed in a settlement that I thought was ridiculous to let them off the hook from fines for a year. But that doesn't mean we can't go after them for the next round. So what I want to know, number one, is what's the status of coming back with the rating system that we actually asked for that would do what I described. I was hoping there'd be a draft of that here today. Not just contract compliance, but actual speed and success in implementation. So are you planning to do that? Are you close to doing that? And would the plan be front-loaded in terms of their speed of implementation? And would it relate to a prospect that would be considered upon their renewal?
So the answer to your questions is we can return very quickly if a numeric point system is specific to the requirements. What we heard and what we do know is that right now, if in fact we decide that one or all the RSPs were going to go out to bid for the zones, one or all the zones, that decision needs to be made 5 years before the contract ends, okay? Which is before any of the scheduled liquidated damages. So we do completely understand that what is necessary is to inform this committee on where the RSPs are in whether or not it actually appears that they can even meet those goals, long before we actually measure them and assess liquidated damages. What we wanted to present to the council was a method that also wasn't arbitrary. We did not want to set up an arbitrary goal for all the RSPs to meet. We felt it was the most straightforward to present actually how well they have done and how well they have done in towards meeting their diversion. Where they are against their contractual goals is a measurement that you can compare it to, but where they are in terms of actual diversion or the actual number of businesses that they have been able to recruit into the system, it is the ultimate measurement of their success in reaching those goals. We can definitely work with your office to convert those percentages to a numeric value, 1 through 10. But again, what we want to be able to do is rate them on something that's definitive, and that is the amount of material that they're actually collecting compared to how much they're disposing.
And my thought and my intention is not necessarily have them just compared to their goals, but to really be compared to each other and how effectively they're drawing down on methane, and not necessarily even have it based on their plans. You know, some may have planned for more aggressive response. Some plans may have said they could do it much less effectively. I don't care that they've said, oh, we're going to be lousy at this and be slow. I wanted to compare to each other and to give an advantage to those that are able to draw down more greenhouse gases and do it more quickly and effectively. So I'm hoping we can do all that. I'm hoping that we can come back with that pretty quickly. And do we not have any kind of a mandatory set of organics recycling requirements? Is this all voluntary?
So yes, currently the way the Sikla contract was developed is as part of the base rate every customer pays. It includes a black bin and a blue bin. The green bin is basically on request and agreed to by each individual customer. The city does not have a mandatory ordinance in place. There are no other penalties against businesses for not. There is AB 1826 that's on the books right now. SB 1383 is the newest form of organic recycling by the state. Those rules are in their final stages. But in those rules, they actually, what we've seen in the drafts, require jurisdictions to adopt a mandatory ordinance, an ordinance requiring mandatory recycling. Though the rules of 1383 will also require a jurisdiction to establish an enforcement mechanism. That enforcement mechanism, according to the state, will include penalties for businesses that do not comply. Since those rules have not been formalized yet and not adopted, they're still in draft. They're expected to come out in early 2020. Once those rules get adopted, we'll be back talking with this committee on how LA complies with the rules of 1383, as well as our Sikla service providers and customers.
But until then, the only thing that would drive the haulers to do more earlier is this assessment system that could affect the renewal.
Yes, and the fact that it's going to take a while to convince customers to participate in the program. I would say if anybody thought that they could wait to the last year and convince 46,000 customers to participate in a green bin program, they would probably be mistaken in their approach.
And plus, waiting to the last year would miss years of implementation of massive methane savings, which is what I've been getting at all along.
Councilman, I'm Alex Hello, LA Sanitation, and I'd also like to point out that a couple things. In January 22, in about 2 years from today, this committee and council will decide whether they want to renew these RSPs or not. The data will be available to you to say, did they reach the goals that they have set or not? So we don't have to wait to 2025, 26. By 2022, the decision would need to be made because it takes us 3-4 years just to put an RFP, one, out on the street and be able to keep the good players, those who have implemented programs and those who did not. The second thing I'd like to touch on, what you mentioned about the impact, landfills are the largest emitters of greenhouse gas. And so when we're talking in the Sikla about 1 million tons being taken from the landfill, that's the big reduction we want to see the RSPs are doing. So we're taking recycling out, we're going to take the organics out. That's the only way for all of us, including the Sikla providers, to reach the 90% diversion set by 2025. We would not be able to achieve it without 1 million tons coming out from the landfill. So that's the big things that we really are pushing them on the tonnage reduction that's going to the landfill and utilizing other technologies to be able to capture the greenhouse gas and reduce the emissions.
And just once again to clarify, I think you've hit the sweet spot that I'm looking for, which is not being ready by 2022. It's how quickly can we get them to jump on it now and not stall so they come in just under the wire in 2022. We want them to be up and running full board sometime this year and as early this year as possible with their education programs to get participation and to contractually obligate themselves with a landfill or a digester and get moving.
Exactly.
And one thing I would ask so that we can move more quickly, Madam Chair, I'd ask that the department come back once a month until they actually have a rating system planned for us so they can update us on their progress.
Sure. And how far away are you from the rating system? You said it was almost completed? Or you have a draft of one?
Well, certainly. This is the basis for what the rating system would be.
So you're pretty
based
close.
upon.
How many weeks away are you from actually having one completed?
I would say we could be at this committee and present it within the next 30 days.
Okay, so next month you should
That'd
have
be
it
great.
first. Very well, Mr. Koretzfield.
And I have one other question.
Sure.
Which may take 2 seconds, I'm not sure. Do we have all the haulers represented here to
Yes, we do.
briefly talk about what each of them have done on moving forward in this arena, or are they not prepared to do that? Madam Chair, I don't know if you're prepared to entertain that
Well,
or
I don't
not.
know if we were expecting the haulers to give you a formal presentation. I don't know who's here.
All the RSPs are here today. All the Sikla service providers
They're here
are
today.
in the room.
Do you want, you're asking for them to come forward and
I'm
give you
asking
a
if
formal
they
presentation?
could each give a very brief 1 or 2 minute presentation on where they are in the process.
Before you do that, Mr. Koretz, I'm sorry, Mr. Koretz, Mr. Krikorian does have a couple of more questions. Do you have questions of staff, or do you have questions of the haulers?
No, I'll be really quick.
Okay.
First of all, with LA Sands program, I love my bucket. I'm using my bucket all the time. It's great. All the food waste in the Krikorian household is going to the green bin. It works terrific. I would be a little concerned about a policy that is going to impose additional bin burdens on business, and especially small businesses, which already have been complaining about lack of space for the bins that they are required to have under Sikla, and are already complaining about the cost of that and so forth. Right now, it's voluntary, and I think that makes sense. A restaurant could probably save money by having a green bin as opposed to putting it in the black bin. Grocery stores, stuff like that, that makes sense. But I would just caution as we move forward with this program to ensure that it is not punitive of businesses that are already being forced to participate in this program. I have a specific question about the wholesale produce mart, which is probably one of the biggest generators of food waste that we have, but it is in an area serviced by one of the smaller haulers. And so I have an organization called Food Forward in my district that is one of the, what's the term of art that we're using for food rescue programs. They're not able to get as much support for that effort as they would be if one of the larger haulers that are here were servicing that area. So what's going on with the produce mart?
So with the produce mart, and we have I've met with Food Forward, discussed it. One of the things that we'll be looking at releasing in early 2019 is a grant that will make more funding available that isn't, say, RSP specific, but more area specific,
Terrific.
issue specific.
That should solve that problem. And then lastly, LA Sam is already doing a great job of creating compost from green waste. So with this additional inflow of compost that will come from a green waste program, and by the way, you might speak to whether it's how much is anaerobic digestion, how much is composting, how much is, other, but if there's going to be that much more compost being created, are we able to give away all of our compost now? Is there enough demand for it that we're actually getting rid of our compost? And if this additional commercial and multifamily compost flow is brought into that, would that exceed the marketplace's capacity to take it, even if it's free?
So a couple things that we're looking at is LA Sand is also looking at diversifying where its material goes. We have a pilot right now that we're looking at potentially expanding, which takes material to CR&R, which is an anaerobic digester. So as well as compost. So we don't want to put all of our material in one location or one technology. And we were looking at making sure that that our compost system is able to handle all of the organic waste, which will convert it from a mulch to a full compost, and whatever regulations are done there. From all I know, we're still as much compost or mulch that we produce. It goes.
Great.
So there definitely seems to be the need and desire for the material that is produced.
Very good.
If the material is given, council member, to a private entity that's processing it, usually they end up selling that product. We do get some stuff for free that we can give to our residents. So far, we have been able to utilize everything that we're processing internally, also that stuff that we can give to our residents.
Okay.
But the bulk of the material is being processed with outside agencies, and they're able to sell it and make money off it.
Great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Mr. O'Farrell? No? All right, we can do this very quickly, Mr. Koretz. If the haulers are willing and prepared to come forward and give us your update. I understand if you're not all willing or able to do that today, it's quite okay. I certainly wasn't prepared for you all to come up and speak, but we can do
Which
this
is why I'm
quickly.
asking just a superficial, at some point, hopefully we'll ask for something more detailed in the future.
Yeah, I'll
We can agendize this for a longer discussion if Mr. Koretz so wishes, but for now, if you are willing to just present what you have, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
You can start with you, sir.
Yeah, of course. So good afternoon. My name is Cesar Torres. I'm the Executive Vice President representing Athens. And so we ended up really organizing the outreach in two separate teams. So we ended up having a focus group that really focused on the education piece of it. And so during the process of doing the extended outreach, as we're reaching out to all the clients, one of the questions that we're asking on the technology and the app that we have is, is there any interest in organics? What kind of organic material are they generating? And based on that information, we very quickly got a prospect list of about 1,600 customers or so in the city of LA that we dove deeper into trying to onboard them into the organics. And so out of the 1,600, we've outreached about 50% of them. 30% have actually signed up for organics, and we're currently servicing them. The other third wants us to come back. They wanted to get more information, and so they want us to come back and see them. The other 30% did have spacing issues or at this point refused to take any organics material. So we've gone from 238 customers that were servicing our organics now to well over 350, 360 or so. And the number of tons that we're picking up or that we're diverting from the landfill has gone from 700 per month to now over 1,400 per month. So it's been pretty successful. We've gone from 2 organics routes in the city to now well over 6 organic routes. And in terms of the infrastructure, we're continuing to build upon that. We've invested so far $17 million worth of infrastructure into our American Organics yard or disposal site or composting site, I should say. Phase 1 got us up to 460 tons per day that we're able to compost. And by the end of 2021, we should be able to do 700 plus of tons per day of composting as well. Along with some other avenues that we have, we feel very confident that we have enough capacity to be able to meet the demands of our zones in the city of LA as well. In addition to that, we've also invested in an organic screw press that we're looking to expand into some of the other facilities as well. We're able to process and digest some of the material, some of the wet loads that are coming in from the city of LA with the composting material that we're able to extract. We're taking that to a wastewater treatment facility, and we're approximately being able to divert about 35% of the liquid from the total tons that are going into the organic screw press. For example, in the month of November, we had 5,000 tons of wet material that went into the screw press, and we ended up recovering about 1,800 tons. So it's a pretty successful machinery that we have there. And so we're going to continue that infrastructure. We're going to continue the outreach process, and we hope that over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, we'll be able to outreach the additional 50% of those initial prospects and be able to onboard more of other customers into the organics program.
Good afternoon. Suzanne Passantino with Republic Services, and we serve the South Los Angeles and the Northeast Valley zones. And to repeat kind of what Dan said earlier and Cesar here, as part of the original outreach, I think all of us, had to go out. We did very detailed waste assessments on all of our customers, and through that, we have identified those customers that do generate food waste in the city. And as part of the optimization period, we're now going back out and retouching all of those customers again and identifying more opportunities. So we have access to the customer base, and we are actively, our whole zero waste team is actively looking to identify folks to enroll in the program. One of the challenges that, Dan had mentioned earlier is that it is a voluntary program, and it also does cost the customers, more money to participate. So that's a challenge in some areas, that we're working with our customers. So we've really focused a lot on food rescue and food recovery. Republic has partnered with a lot of local companies, World Harvest, Food Finders, and St. Francis, and a few others. We just recently put together an outreach video, which I think we sent to everyone. Hopefully you've had a chance to see it, and collaborating with Bureau of Sanitation, World Harvest, and also the LA Zoo, where they're taking, almost 10 tons a week of food over to the LA Zoo as well. So we're really excited about that. In terms of our facilities, Republic has invested in organics infrastructure, and we continue to do so, and we're continuing to look for additional opportunities. We co-own the Agramenchino facility, where we process about 25,000 tons of organics yearly, and we just recently have put a new program in place at our CBT facility in Anaheim. We're actually really excited about it. It's a Thor system, and it's able to separate a lot of the contamination that comes in these organics containers, because they're not really all that clean material when we get them, and then the material is then able to be composted or sent to an anaerobic digester. Certainly encourage all of you to come visit our facilities and see what we're doing, and also some of the challenges that we're facing, with increasing the organics outreach. We do have just under 200 customers that we're currently collecting, 19 roll-off customers. We've sent sanitation a lot of really good success stories on individual locations that we have been very proud to increase diversion at, and we'll continue to share those with you and with LA San as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Judy Gregory. I'm with NASA Services, and we provide service to the downtown Los Angeles area. So we're really happy with our organics program that we've been able to implement thus far. Of the 2,400 customers in the downtown area, we have organics programs at 149 of them. It's currently diverting 500 tons per month of material. This is going to the Puente Hills MRF, which is about 65% of the total material that the MRF receives. We work to establish new food recovery at a number of the locations in downtown, including in the Produce Mart. So our partners are World Harvest, Heart of Compassion. We work with Food Forward. We also work with LA Compost to divert non-edible materials. So our food recovery last year, we diverted approximately 300 tons of new edible food recovery to those food recovery organizations. As both of them have already discussed, our outreach has really been focused on the large generators. We've also focused on national companies. So when you look at organizations that are businesses that are large and have chains, they tend to be early adopters. So we focused on a lot of those chains as well in order to implement programs. And then additionally, we've really focused on those with the food, which is the heavier material. So Produce Mart or food manufacturing, food distribution, wholesale, things like that has been where our focus is at. So when we do go out to the businesses, we definitely show them what's in their bin. We do the visual. We put it down on the report that they receive that shows that 25% of your material is estimated to be organic, and this is how it would affect a change when we right-size the account. So sometimes it's hard for businesses to really visualize that until you do the right sizing and you show them just how much organics. A lot of them, the first thing is, I don't have organics, I don't have food waste. And then when you show them the visual, that's very helpful for them to really see what kind of impact they could have by having a program. So that's been, we feel like it's been successful. A lot of the focus has obviously been on the blue bin, but in terms of that, we feel good where our organics program is in light of the fact that it's voluntary. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim Wirt, Contract Manager with Waste Management. From the start of the Sikla program in 2017, we began to onboard customers for their organics recycling. Our strategy was to obtain the low-hanging fruit, get with the national retailers as well as restaurant chains, as well as get those customers that are generating a large amount of food, and then partner them with the food and reuse organizations. Through our work And since 2017, we have 200 customers that are currently recycling their food and their organics. In addition, we have connected establishments with our nonprofit organizations that redistribute edible food. Some of these amazing partners have been One Generation, the West Valley Food Pantry, the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, and the Valley Rescue Mission. Our partners have kept over 1,500 out of the landfill. To sustain our momentum, we will continue to do the outreach and education to further increase organics recycling in the West Valley and in the Southeast Valley. Education and outreach being key to reaching their objectives for the Sikla program. Our field team of 32 schedule appointments and will continue to schedule appointments to obtain the potential new business organics recycling service customers. We know that we have a multicultural customer base and have translated outreach material in Spanish, Russian, Hebrew, as well as Armenian, just to name a few. These customers include the large multifamily complexes, local restaurants, and any type of businesses that have kitchens, lunch rooms, or food service delivery. In addition, besides the residential complexes and the office buildings, we've identified a little over 800 restaurants, approximately 60 grocers, 16 food manufacture plants, and 10 wholesale food establishments for our waste assessors to go back and revisit. We believe that now is the time for everyone to add organics to the recycling routine. Regarding the infrastructure front, Waste Management is investing over $11 million in the organics extraction recycling system called the ORAX. When the ORAX is operational at the end of this year, it will take 800 tons per day of organic processing capacity to be added at our Sun Valley Recycling Park. The dry cake from the ORAX will be turned into renewable energy. I would be happy to arrange time for any of you Councilmember Koretz, who might be interested in coming and seeing this process once it's operational. I will personally give you guys a tour because I am absolutely excited to see this and wait for it to come. Our investments in the training our people and educating our customers to enable the paradigm shift in the waste and the recycling thinking and habits, along with our contribution for the infrastructure enhancements, speaks to our commitment to the zero waste set forth by the City of LA. Thanks.
Thank you very much, guys. We have more?
7 of us.
4 plus 3.
3 more.
Want me to lead off?
Sure.
I'm Jason Rush. I'm from Ware Disposal. We provide service to the southeast zone. Currently, we have, without doubling over what everybody else has said, this year we will move forward to fully implementing AB 1826 from our customer base. We've identified 707 of our approximately 2,000 customers in our zone for additional outreach. The breakdown between commercial to multifamily is about 5 to 2. Currently, we have 25 participating in our organics collection program, and it's a number we'd like to see increase over this next year. It took us a great deal of effort just to increase our blue bin percentage by 149% from year over year, so we figure this is going to take a bit of time with our zone. As to the food rescue program, We recovered 1,539 tons over the last 2 years. We made over $138,000 in donations related to that. And total meals from the recovered food would be about 2.3 million and change. We're still trying to figure out what we need to do in terms of infrastructure. The larger issue in our zone is not necessarily the organic part, it's more of textile. We have 10 full refuse routes on a daily basis, and the textile district, which is the north part of our zone, comprises about 3 to 4 full trucks of it. So we have to figure out what we need to do with that in order to get into compliance with what we have in our contract. We already have our staff out in the field trying to implement our 1826 program. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Blackburn, and I'm with Universal Waste Systems, and we service the Northeast Zone in Los Angeles. Our approach has been similar to everyone else as we rolled out the program through the implementation and the Removing Barriers program, but we've continued to provide organic collection and green waste services to all the customers that were currently receiving service under the city's prior programs prior to Sikla. And any customers through our waste assessments that have requested service, we've added those services as well. We're currently servicing around 100 customers with organic and green waste services in the Northeast Zone, collecting approximately 2,000 tons per year. In addition, our zero waste reps have worked with providing education and training to our customers to encourage them also to use our reuse and nonprofit program partners. Through this program, our partners are collecting approximately 350 to 400 tons per year of organics in the Northeast Zone. Our current operational focus since implementation, and like I said, through the RBR program, the Removing Barriers program, has been to focus on implementing recycling programs and then maximizing the participation at those programs, which we feel like has been successful through the training that we've done since the new programs have been finalized in the first quarter of 19. We've seen about a 20% increase in our recycling, and our organics waste collected has doubled as far as tonnage based on existing customers just by giving them more education and more training. So we're encouraged by that success. Let's see here. Our zero waste team, like I said, was focused on the blue bin, but now as the program, the RBR program had intended, they will now, starting in 2020 and moving forward, refocus on implementing organic programs to all of our customers. We've identified about 4,000 customers in our zone that would qualify under the current regulations to have organics. So we are systematically working that out over the next year to 2 years. And we felt that it was important to make sure that we did it in a focused manner and provided the training and the education prior to the containers coming, kind of learning from some of the mistakes on the Blue Bin program. So we'll be taking it slower, but moving it through in a more systematic manner as we progress. As far as infrastructure, over the last 5 years or so, Universal Waste has invested about $5 million in a compost and organics facility in Southgate. The facility currently processes about 30,000 to 35,000 tons of green waste and compost materials every year. And that facility has been important to, as we transition our organics and the food waste, have a place to process the residuals from our technologies that we're working on. In addition to that facility, we have a fully permitted transfer station and organics facility just south of downtown that's been fully permitted through all the state, the city, and the local enforcement agencies. We're finalizing construction plans as we speak to start construction on that facility this quarter of this year, and we hope to have it done by the first quarter of next year. That facility will be able to process up to 1,000 tons a day of solid waste and organic material, which we feel will be more than enough capacity to handle our zone and any other material that may be available from other RSPs. That facility will be approximately a $20 million investment into the city and the infrastructure to make sure that this program is successful. So we feel like we're on the right track, and we're excited to continue moving forward and get these programs rolled out to our customers. So thank you.
Kudos. Bill Kalpikoff, CalMet Services. I'm the general manager. Also, I'd like to commend Nuri for your new appointment. Not just so that you know.
Say that again?
I'd like to commend you on your new appointment.
Oh, thank you.
Anyways, been in the business, the family business, pretty much all our life. We rolled out the Sikla program, and I think we were very, very successful. The last 2 years, we kind of concentrated more on right-sizing and the blue bands contamination and got all that fixed. I have 2 full-time zero-waste team members in the field every day, plus also a supervisor and the rest of the support staff. Organics, I think we're very successful in it. Since we've started, 2018, we collected almost 44,000 pounds. 2019, being that we've been more aggressive, being that's when the law really took place, we diverted 763,000 pounds, which is, to me, it's a very successful program in the small zone that we're in. And we took it with boots on the ground running, and we're going to continue to do so. And I think we'll meet our mandates with the state and also the city contract that requires.
Thank you very much. Sorry about the short notice. Mr. Correa, did you want to add anything else before we adjourn?
Now, I just ask, since they said they could do it in 30 days, if we could ask that sanitation come back in 30 days with their proposed method of assessing the success of the haulers on organic waste. And if we could ask any of the haulers that weren't able to detail it yet to detail their plans for how they would deal with an exponential increase in organic waste to recycle, and whether they've thought through all their facilities plans and where they plan to recycle those materials.
Okay, those sound like 2 different requests. So you're asking for sanitation to come back in 30 days, which they've said they're willing to do. You also want all the haulers to come back with a detailed plan on how they're going to meet their organics requirement?
Yes, and they could at least present that to us in terms of their planning for infrastructure and facilities.
Sure.
And
okay.
perhaps we could do those together.
Let's see what that agenda looks like. We will try, but if not, we can agendize your second request for the following meeting. Okay?
Certainly. Thank you.
Are there any other issues or items? Mr. O'Farrell, you have anything else? Okay, thank you very much. That adjourns our meeting for today.